Okay, this is Jack the Exam Guy. Once again, we're going to be looking at the NFPA 14 for you plumbers out there. All right, this is going to be all about standpipes. All right, so if you any of the questions reference the fire department or standpipes or so on and so forth, you're going to want to look at the NFPA 14. I do want to caution you though about the NFPA 14. There is standpipe information that you're going to find in the plumber's handbook. So if you can't find it, if it mentions standpipe specifically, you can't find it in the NFPA 14, then you can go to that plumber's handbook. And you know that plumber's handbook has got a really, really good index. Speaking of indexes, this for some reason, some of these NFPA books do not have the best indexes in the world, and this one does not. So just be aware of that. It may not get you to where you need to go. Okay, so it's not that it's not in the index, it's just organized in a not very good manner. Okay, I could go in and explain the whole thing, but it's just not a good index. Okay, so what you can do is if you see things in the index, you can highlight them, and so you can find them later. And another thing is if you want to go through the index, just understand that it's in the index, but it may not be where you think it is, so you got to scan the whole index and for your keyword or your key concept or something like that. Well, enough about the index here. We'll go ahead and go through the meat and potatoes of what's in the NFPA 14. Once again, chapter 3 in these NFPA books, it's a definition. So we're going to look on page 9. Now, I'm in the 2016. If you're in a different version, the information's about the same, very similar. So might just have a hard time finding it. Okay, so I do see a definition of a high-rise building in Chapter 3, so you're going to want to find that. It's a building where the floor of an occupied story is greater than 75 feet. Okay, so they can make a distinction. There are some distinctions there. Okay, on page 9, we're looking at system classes. Okay, this is either 3.3.19 or you may be 3.3.22 if you have a more updated book than I do. Okay, 3.3, you have a class 1. Okay, now if you remember your NFPA 99, you had categories, system categories, and what have you. Now this is similar, but then they kind of throw you a curveball, so it's kind of interesting. Okay, a system that provides a class 1 is a system that provides a 2.5-inch hose connection. Okay, for the fire department. Great. A class 2 system, it can provide an 1.5-inch hose station, okay, for use primarily by what they call trained personnel, or the fire department can use it, okay, during like an initial response. So that's a class 2. Now they get to a class 3 system, and you would think that maybe that's just kind of going further down the line, but it's, as far as quality is concerned, but it's really not. It seems to me like it's stepping back up because a class 3 system has that 1.5-inch hose station for your trained personnel and a 2.5-inch hose connection for the fire department. Okay. Now, I want to caution you, you're going to see some applications where they'll call it a class 2 system, where they'll allow it to be a 1-inch hose connection instead of an 1.5 inch. So just be aware of that. Okay, so it's not always, class 2 is not always 1.5 inch. Sometimes it's 1 inch. Okay, so we're going to bend some pipe on section 4.2.7.1. Okay, bending of Schedule 40 steel pipe and K&L copper shall be permitted where bends are made with no kinks, ripples, distortions, reductions in diameter, or any noticeable deviations from a round shape. Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. The next paragraph says 4.2.7.2, the minimum radius of a bend shall be 6 pipe diameters for pipes sizes 2 inches smaller and 5 pipe diameters for 2.5 inches and larger. See that a lot. Okay, 4.3.3. Fittings shall be extra heavy pattern where pressures exceed 175 psi. Okay, there we go. Next paragraph says standard weight patterned cast iron fittings 2 inches in size and smaller shall be permitted where pressures do not exceed 300 psi. All right, very good. So we've got that covered. we're going to go over and talk about, we're going to talk about some valves on page 13, 4.5. All right. I like paragraph 452. Valves shall not close in less than 5 seconds when operated at maximum possible speed from the fully open position. Okay. And then I want to look at some hoses, 4621. Each hose connection provided for use by trained personnel, class 2 and class 3, shall be equipped with not more than 100 feet of listed 1.5-inch lined collapsible or non-collapsible fire hose attached and ready for use. Okay. Your hose rack at the top of the next column. 4631. Each 1.5-inch hose station provided with 1.5-inch hose shall be equipped with a listed rack or approved storage method. 4.7.5. Hose connections shall be located so that there is at least 3-inch clearance between any adjacent object and the handle of the valve when the valve is at any position ranging from fully open to fully closed. Okay, so this is where you're going to connect your hose. You got to have some clearance in there for your handle. Okay, 482. So this is fire department connections. 4.8. 4.482. Unless requirements of 4821 or 22 are met, and we'll talk about that in a minute. The fire department shall have at least 2.5-inch connections using internal threaded swivel fittings, standard thread as specified in NFPA 1963. Where local fire department connections do not conform to NFPA 16.3, the AHJ, remember, authority having jurisdiction, shall be permitted to designate the connection to be used. All right. Let us go to system requirements on page 14, chapter 5. 5212, size of systems volume limitations. Not more than 750 gallon system capacity shall be controlled by one dry type valve. Next paragraph, piping volume shall be permitted to exceed the requirements of the previous chapter, where the system design is such that water is delivered to the system at the most remote hose connection in not more than 3 minutes, starting at the normal air pressure on the system and at the time of the fully opened hose connection. Okay. Page 15, 5.3, we're talking about those classes again. Okay, class one again, 2.5-inch heavy fire streams. Class 2 system, 5322. Now, 5322, remember we talked about 1.5 inch. 5321 talks about 1.5 inch hose station. We talked about that. I told you there was an exception to this, and this is where I was talking about. 5322, a minimum 1-inch hose shall be permitted to be used for hose stations if it is a light hazard occupancy. Okay, and the AHJ approves. And then you've got your class 3. Once again, it's going to have 1.5 inch and a 2.5, but you can have the 1-inch. Once again, that 1.5 inch can be a 1-inch in a class 3 if it's a light hazard occupancy. Okay, 5332. Where the building is protected throughout by an approved automatic sprinkler system, class 2 hose stations for use by trained personnel shall not be required, subject to the approval of the AHJ, provided that each class 1 connection is 2.5 inch and is equipped with a 2.5 inch by 1.5 inch reducer and a cap that is attached with a chain. Okay, now the standpipe systems themselves, 541. Class 1 standpipe system shall be permitted to be automatic dry, automatic wet, semi-automatic dry, or manual wet in buildings not classified as high-rise buildings. So a non-high-rise can have any of those types of systems. A Class 1 standpipe system in buildings classified as high-rise shall be automatic or semi-automatic. Okay, hopefully you made that distinction there. All right. We go to 542, Class 2 and Class 3 standpipe systems. Class 2 and Class 3 standpipe systems with 1.5 inch hose stations shall be automatic wet systems unless located in a facility where piping is subject to freezing and where a fire brigade is trained to operate the system without fire department intervention, in which case an automatic dry or semi-automatic dry system shall be permitted. We're going to go to 551 gauges. An approved pressure gauge with a connection not smaller than 1/4 of an inch shall be installed at each discharge pipe from the fire pump and the public water works. There you go. Okay, how do we, chapter 6, protect the above ground piping? 612.2.1. Protection shall consist of one of the following: enclosure in a fire rated exit stairway. Number 2, enclosure in a fire rated construction with such rating equal to that of the enclosed fire rated exit stairway. Or 3, listed fire wrap or other insulating material applied directly to the pipe with such rating equal to that of the enclosed fire rated exit stairway. Okay. All right, well, let's look at, so that's our protection of the above ground piping. Let's look at 6.3, gate valves and check valves. 6.3.1.1. Connection to each automatic water supply shall be provided with an approved indicating type valve and check valve located close to the supply. Okay, 633 tells us listed indicating type valves shall be provided at the standpipe for controlling branch lines where the distance to the remote hose station exceeds 40 feet measured along the pipe. All right. We're going to look at identification, 638 on page 18. 63852, letters shall be red with a white background and shall be 2.5 inches in height. All right. We're going to look at design, chapter 7, pressure limitations, 721. The maximum pressure at any point in the system at any time shall not exceed 350 psi. 7231, where the residual pressure at 1.5-inch outlet on a hose connection available for trained personnel exceeds 100 psi, an approved pressure regulating device shall be provided to limit the pressure, okay, to 100. Okay. 7232 at the top of page 19, where the static pressure at 2.5-inch hose connection exceeds 175 psi, a listed pressure regulating device shall be provided to limit it to 175. 724, where more than 2 hose connections are used downstream of a pressure regulating device, the following conditions shall apply. And I've got number 5 highlighted. Pressure regulating devices shall be installed not more than 7 feet 6 inches above the floor. Okay. 7.3, locations of hose connections. 7311, hose connections and hose stations shall be unobstructed and shall be located not less than 3 feet or more, not less than 3 feet or more than 5 feet above the floor. Okay, so we're between 3 and 5. It's got to be our hose connection. Class 1 system, 7321. Hose connections shall be provided at each main floor landing of required exit stairs. Okay, that's a Class 1. Okay, systems, that's where your location of your hose connections. In a Class 2, 733, on page 20, well, let's go back up just a little bit. I got something else on page 20. Left hand at the top, 7322. Still talking about Class 1. Hose connections shall be provided on each side of the wall adjacent to the exit openings of the horizontal exits. Where all floor areas are reachable from an exit stairway hose connection on the same side of a horizontal exit within the distances required, the hose connection on the other side of the horizontal exit shall be permitted to be omitted. Okay. 732211. The travel distance shall be 200 feet for sprinkled buildings. So that's the difference between hose connections. All right. In a Class 1 system, 200 feet apart. Actually, it's travel distance 200 feet. When you travel distance 200 feet, that means they're 400 feet apart. So you could be in the middle of 2 that are 400 feet apart, and that travel distance would be 200 feet. Okay, Class 2 systems, 733. Class 2 systems shall be provided with 1.5-inch hose stations so that all portions of each floor level of the building are within 130 feet of a hose connection, provided with an 1.5-inch hose station, or 120 feet of a hose connection provided with less than an inch and a half hose. Okay, Class 3 systems. Class 3 systems shall be provided with hose connection as required for Class 1 and Class 2. All right, and that makes sense. 7.8.1. We're talking about pressure limits. Minimum design pressure for hydraulically designed systems. Hydraulically designed standpipe systems shall be designed to provide the water flow rate required by Section 7.10 at a minimum residual pressure of 100 psi at the outlet of the hydraulically most remote 2.5-inch hose connection and 65 psi at the outlet of the hydraulically most remote 1.5-inch station. Okay, Class 1 and 2 flow rates, 7.10.111. For Class 1 and Class 3 systems, the minimum flow rate for the hydraulically most remote standpipe shall be 500 gallons per minute through the two most remote 2.5-inch outlets. Okay, next paragraph. Where a horizontal standpipe on a Class 1 or Class 3 system supplies 3 or more hose connections on any floor, the minimum flow rate for the hydraulically most demanding horizontal standpipe shall be 750 gallons per minute. Next paragraph, the minimum flow rate for additional standpipe shall be 250 gallons per minute per standpipe for buildings with floor areas that do not exceed 80,000 square feet per floor. Okay, next page, page 22. All right, combined systems, 7.10.1.3.1.1. In a building protected in accordance with NFPA 13 or 13R, the water supply for the combined sprinkler and automatic system shall be based on the sprinkler system demand or the standpipe demand, whichever is greater. That's a class, let's see, Class 2 system, 7.10.2. What we were talking about before was a combined system. And a Class 2 system, 7.10.2.1.1, for Class 2 systems, the minimum flow rate for the hydraulically most remote hose connection shall be 100 gallons per minute. That's your Class 2. 7.10.3.1, this individual connections, the maximum flow required for a 2.5-inch hose connection shall be 250 gallons per minute. Lots of good stuff here. Class 1, Class 2, Class 3. We're going to do a hydraulic test, 11.4.1. All new systems, including yard piping and fire department connection piping, shall be tested hydrostatically at not less than 200 psi or 50 psi in excess of the system working pressure, whichever is greater than 2 hours. Okay, all right. Hopefully we know the difference between Class 1, Class 2, Class 3. We have pressure requirements. By the way, I want to point out something to you called a Siamese connection. It's in here somewhere. I just didn't see it while we were going through it. You may have seen them. A Siamese connection, you've got one pipe and then it splits where you can hook up two 2.5-inch pipes to, so it's a splitter. They call that a Siamese. It's in here and it's also in the plumber's handbook. Just want to let you know that for sure. But that pretty much takes you through the NFPA 14. So if you good luck with you on that exam. And once again, this is Jack the Exam Guy. Don't let anybody tell you you don't know Jack. You know Jack the Exam Guy. Okay, thank you very much.